Over the last couple of years, something extraordinary unfolded in America's housing market. Home prices didn't just inch upward, they exploded at a rate that shocked economists, crushed first-time buyers, and made homeowners feel invincible. From sprawling suburbs in Texas to beach towns in California, sellers believed they held all the cards. Properties sold within hours, often for tens of thousands above asking, and the phrase buyer's market became a forgotten relic from another era. But 2025 has turned that entire dynamic on its head. The iron grip sellers once had is slipping fast. Cities that recently overflowed with cash offers and frantic open houses are now flooded with homes that nobody seems to want. For the first time in years, prices aren't just cooling, they're crashing hard. Sellers who believed their homes were bulletproof investments are discovering that gravity still exists in real estate. Buyers who were locked out for years are suddenly watching listing after listing sit untouched, week after week. Inventory is piling up. Days on market are stretching into months, and the confidence that defined the pandemic housing frenzy has evaporated into something much closer to panic. If you want to stay ahead of what's really happening in housing markets across the country, hit that subscribe button right now, because we're diving deep into the cities where the collapse is hitting hardest. Today, we're counting down the 10 U.S. cities where everyone is selling at once, and prices are absolutely tanking in 2025. Stick around until number 1, because what's unfolding there could be a preview of what's coming for the rest of the nation. Let's jump in. Number 10. Tampa, Florida. Tampa was supposed to be the success story that kept on giving. During the pandemic, it became a magnet for remote workers, retirees, and investors hunting for tax-free living and year-round sunshine. Home prices climbed relentlessly. Bidding wars became routine. Entire neighborhoods transformed almost overnight as out-of-state money poured in like a tidal wave. Sellers could barely keep up with demand. But by 2025, that gold rush has turned into something far more unsettling. Home prices in Tampa have dropped roughly 11% in a single year, and inventory has more than tripled compared to just 18 months ago. The streets are lined with for sale signs that multiply every week. Properties that once sold in days are now sitting for months with zero offers. Sellers who bought at the peak are realizing they're trapped. The problem isn't just oversupply, it's a complete erosion of affordability. During the boom, prices skyrocketed past what local wages could realistically support. The influx of wealthy transplants masked that imbalance for a while, but now that wave has slowed to a trickle. Remote work is fading. Companies are calling employees back to the office, and the people who drove Tampa's surge are heading back to where they came from. Meanwhile, insurance costs have become a nightmare. Homeowners are facing premiums that have doubled or even tripled. Some can't even find coverage at any price, forcing them to sell and leave entirely. Property taxes have climbed sharply too. For investors, the math no longer works. Rental income can't cover rising mortgage rates, insurance hikes, and maintenance expenses. Many are dumping properties just to stop the bleeding. From Ybor City to Westchase, homes priced at $500,000 are being slashed to $440,000, then $420,000, and still attracting little interest. Number 9. Denver, Colorado. Denver has always been a desirable place to live. The mountains, the lifestyle, the booming job market, it all made sense. For years, people moved there chasing outdoor adventure and career opportunities, driving home prices steadily upward. The city felt balanced, sustainable, and immune to the kind of volatility that plagued coastal markets. But 2025 has shattered that illusion. Home prices in Denver have slipped about 9% year over year, and the number of active listings has surged to levels not seen since the Great Recession. Sellers are panicking, buyers are hesitating, and the market that once hummed with energy now feels eerily stagnant. What changed? For one, mortgage rates have stayed painfully high, locking potential buyers out of the market or forcing them to settle for far less than they hoped. At the same time, Denver's job market has cooled significantly. Tech companies that once fueled growth are laying off workers or freezing hiring entirely. The energy sector, another pillar of the local economy, is facing uncertainty as oil and gas prices fluctuate wildly. Without those high-paying jobs pouring in, demand for housing has weakened considerably. But there's another factor crushing Denver's market: overbuilding. Developers spent years constructing luxury homes and upscale condos aimed at wealthy transplants. They assumed demand would stay strong indefinitely. Instead, they created a glut of expensive inventory that most locals can't afford and out-of-staters no longer want. Entire subdivisions on the outskirts of the metro area sit partially finished. In neighborhoods like Cherry Creek, Park Hill, and Highlands, sellers are slashing prices by $50,000, $75,000, even $100,000 just to generate interest. The psychological shift is profound. Homeowners who felt wealthy on paper are now staring at equity losses that wipe out years of gains. Those who refinanced or took out home equity lines of credit during the boom are suddenly underwater. For first-time buyers, Denver should theoretically be getting more accessible. But even with falling prices, high interest rates mean monthly payments are still crushing. Number 8. Charlotte, North Carolina. Charlotte spent the better part of a decade being celebrated as one of America's smartest real estate bets. Major banks expanded their footprints there. Tech companies opened regional hubs. Families fleeing expensive northeastern cities arrived in waves, drawn by affordable housing, solid schools, and a thriving job market. For years, it seemed like Charlotte could do no wrong. Prices climbed steadily, but not recklessly. Development kept pace with demand. The market felt healthy, balanced, and poised for long-term success. But by 2025, that narrative has unraveled. Home prices have dropped roughly 8% compared to last year, and inventory has spiked sharply across nearly every neighborhood. Homes that used to sell within a week are now sitting for 60, 70, even 90 days with minimal interest. Sellers are cutting prices repeatedly, hoping to attract buyers who simply aren't showing up. The cracks started appearing when migration slowed. The flood of newcomers that powered Charlotte's growth for years has trickled to a near halt. Remote work, once a catalyst for relocation, is no longer the driving force it was. Companies are demanding employees return to the office. At the same time, Charlotte's job market has softened. The financial sector, long the backbone of the local economy, is tightening. Banks are cutting staff, and hiring freezes are becoming common. Tech layoffs have hit the region too. Without a steady stream of high-income workers arriving, the housing market has lost its momentum. Developers didn't get the memo in time. They spent the last few years building thousands of new homes, convinced that demand would remain strong indefinitely. Now those homes are competing for a shrinking pool of buyers. Subdivisions in places like Ballantyne, South End, and University City are littered with unsold inventory. Builders are offering incentives, covering closing costs, buying down interest rates, throwing in upgrades, just to move units. Existing homeowners are feeling the squeeze. Many bought at peak prices in 2021 or 2022 and now find themselves owing more than their homes are worth. Number 7. Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville's transformation over the past decade has been nothing short of remarkable. The city evolved from a regional hub into a national destination, attracting musicians, entrepreneurs, healthcare professionals, and retirees. The skyline changed, the culture expanded. Home prices soared as demand seemed limitless. Sellers enjoyed one of the hottest real estate markets in the country. But by 2025, Nashville's momentum has stalled, and the signs of distress are unmistakable. Home prices have fallen about 10% year over year, and the number of homes for sale has more than doubled in just 12 months. Properties that used to attract multiple offers within days are now sitting idle for weeks, sometimes months, with little to no interest. Sellers are slashing prices, often multiple times, and still struggling to find buyers. The problem is multifaceted. First, Nashville overbuilt. Developers, convinced that demand would never wane, flooded the market with new construction, particularly luxury homes and upscale condos aimed at wealthy transplants. But that wave of transplants has slowed dramatically. Remote work is fading, and many who moved to Nashville during the pandemic are either heading back home or staying put wherever they are now. Second, affordability has become a crisis. Prices climbed so high, so fast, that they disconnected entirely from what local wages could support. The influx of out-of-state money masked that imbalance temporarily, but now that the influx has dried up, the gap is glaring. Average residents, teachers, nurses, service workers, can't afford the homes being built. Third, Nashville's job market is cooling. Healthcare, long a pillar of the local economy, is facing layoffs and hiring freezes. The music and entertainment industries don't provide the kind of mass employment needed to sustain a booming housing market. And the tech sector has pulled back sharply amid nationwide layoffs. The result is a market in freefall. In neighborhoods like East Nashville, Germantown, and the Gulch, homes are being listed at prices 15% or 20% below their 2022 peaks, and even those reductions aren't enough to spark interest. Investors who bought properties expecting steady appreciation are now stuck. They can't sell without taking significant losses. Many are simply walking away, letting properties slip into foreclosure. Number 6. Salt Lake City, Utah. Salt Lake City was the unexpected breakout star of the pandemic housing boom. Suddenly, everyone wanted to live there. Remote workers from California and New York discovered Utah's mountains, outdoor lifestyle, and relatively affordable cost of living. Investors poured in, snapping up properties. Builders scrambled to keep up with demand, and home prices shot up faster than almost anywhere else in the country. Between 2020 and 2022, prices in Salt Lake City climbed more than 40%, leaving longtime residents stunned and priced out. But by 2025, that rocket ship has crashed back to earth. Home prices have fallen roughly 12% year over year, and inventory has exploded. Listings that used to disappear within hours are now sitting for months. Sellers are cutting prices weekly, desperate to attract buyers who seem to have vanished entirely. The shift has been brutal and swift. What happened? First, the out-of-state migration that powered the boom has reversed. Remote work policies are tightening. Companies are calling employees back to the office, and the people who fled to Utah during the pandemic are returning to where they came from. Those who remain are finding that Utah's affordability was fleeting. Prices climbed so high that the cost of living advantage disappeared almost entirely. Second, Salt Lake City's job market isn't strong enough to support the housing prices that were built during the boom. The local economy relies heavily on sectors like hospitality, retail, and small-scale tech, none of which provide the kind of high-wage jobs needed to sustain a market where median home prices approached $600,000. Without a constant influx of wealthy transplants, demand has collapsed. Third, inventory has surged. Developers built aggressively during the boom, convinced that demand would remain strong. Now thousands of new homes are hitting the market just as buyers are pulling back. Entire subdivisions in places like Draper, Harriman, and South Jordan sit partially empty, with builders offering deep discounts just to move inventory. Sellers who bought at the peak are trapped. Many owe more on their mortgages than their homes are currently worth. The psychological toll is significant. Homeowners who felt wealthy on paper just a few years ago are now watching their equity evaporate. Number 5. Raleigh, North Carolina. Raleigh, along with its surrounding research triangle, was supposed to be different. It had the jobs, the universities, the research institutions, and the steady, sustainable growth that other cities could only envy. For years, Raleigh was held up as a model of how to grow responsibly. But by 2025, even Raleigh has succumbed to the forces tearing through real estate markets nationwide. Home prices have dropped about 9% year over year, and inventory has surged to levels not seen in over a decade. Homes are sitting on the market for months, sellers are cutting prices repeatedly, and buyers are walking away from deals at the last minute, spooked by economic uncertainty and the sense that prices might fall even further. The cracks began appearing when the tech sector, a major pillar of Raleigh's economy, started shedding jobs. Layoffs at major employers and hiring freezes at startups have removed a critical source of demand. The workers who were supposed to fill all those new subdivisions aren't arriving, and some who are already here are leaving. At the same time, Raleigh's housing market fell victim to the same overbuilding that plagued so many other cities. Developers spent years constructing homes aimed at wealthy transplants, assuming demand would remain strong indefinitely. Instead, they created a glut of inventory that the local market simply can't absorb. Entire neighborhoods on the outskirts of the metro area sit partially empty. Builders are offering aggressive incentives, covering closing costs, buying down mortgage rates, including thousands of dollars in upgrades, but even those sweeteners aren't enough to move inventory. Existing homeowners are feeling the squeeze too. Many bought at peak prices expecting steady appreciation. Instead, they're watching their equity shrink month by month. Raleigh's downturn is especially sobering because the city did so many things right. It diversified its economy, invested in education and infrastructure, and grew at a measured pace. But none of that was enough to insulate it from the broader forces reshaping the housing market. Number 4. Portland, Oregon. Portland's housing market was already fragile before 2025, but this year has pushed it into outright crisis. Home prices have plummeted roughly 13% year over year, and inventory has flooded the market at a pace that's overwhelming buyers and crushing sellers. Properties that used to sell quickly are now sitting for months, sometimes half a year, with minimal interest. Price cuts have become routine, and even aggressive reductions aren't enough to spark activity. Portland's problems run deep. The city's population is shrinking. After years of steady growth, people are leaving, driven out by high taxes, rising crime, and a cost of living that no longer feels justified. Remote workers who moved to Portland during the pandemic are heading elsewhere, and locals who've lived there for decades are calling it quits, tired of watching their city change in ways they no longer recognize. The job market has weakened significantly. Tech companies that once anchored Portland's economy are laying off workers or shutting down entirely. Nike, long a cornerstone of the region's employment base, has struggled with declining sales. Small businesses are closing at alarming rates, unable to survive the combination of high rents, labor costs, and declining foot traffic. Without jobs, there's no demand for housing, and without demand, prices collapse. But Portland's challenges go beyond economics. Livability has become a major issue. Homelessness is visible and growing. Public safety concerns are driving families to the suburbs or out of the state entirely. Schools are underfunded and struggling. The sense of community that once defined Portland has frayed. For sellers, the situation is dire. Homes that were worth $700,000 in 2021 are now listed at $600,000 and still not selling. Desperation is setting in. Some sellers are offering to cover buyers' closing costs, include furniture, or even pay down interest rates just to generate interest. But buyers are wary. Why buy in a city where prices are falling, jobs are disappearing, and the trajectory feels uncertain at best? Investors who once saw Portland as a safe market are now unloading properties as fast as they can. Many are taking losses, but they'd rather cut their losses now than watch values sink even further. Foreclosures are starting to tick up. Number 3. Austin, Texas. Austin's fall from grace has been one of the most dramatic in the entire country. Just a few years ago, the city was the darling of America's real estate market, the epicenter of the tech exodus, and the place everyone wanted to be. Home prices soared, investors flooded in, builders couldn't keep up with demand. The narrative around Austin was one of unstoppable growth and limitless potential. But by 2025, that story has completely unraveled. Home prices in Austin have crashed roughly 14% year over year, and inventory has exploded to levels not seen in over a decade. Homes that used to sell in days are now sitting for months. Sellers are slashing prices aggressively, often multiple times, and still struggling to attract serious buyers. The market that felt invincible just 2 years ago is now in free fall. What went wrong? The answer is a perfect storm of factors. First, the tech industry that powered Austin's boom has collapsed. Layoffs at major employers like Tesla, Oracle, and a wave of startups have gutted the high-income renter and buyer base that sustained the market. The Silicon Hills moniker, once a source of pride, now feels like a cruel joke. Jobs that were supposed to be recession-proof evaporated overnight. Second, Austin overbuilt on a massive scale. Developers, convinced that demand would remain strong indefinitely, constructed thousands of homes and luxury condos aimed at wealthy tech workers. But those workers aren't coming anymore. Some are leaving. Others never arrived in the first place. The result is a glut of high-end inventory that nobody wants and almost nobody can afford. Entire neighborhoods on the outskirts of the metro area sit partially finished, with unsold homes and empty lots as far as the eye can see. Third, affordability has become a disaster. Prices climbed so high, so fast, that they completely disconnected from what local wages could support. The influx of out-of-state money masked that imbalance for a while, but now that the money has dried up, the gap is impossible to ignore. Average residents, teachers, service workers, city employees can't afford the homes being built. Fourth, Property taxes in Austin have skyrocketed. Texas has no state income tax, but it makes up for that with some of the highest property taxes in the country. As home values surged during the boom, so did tax bills. For investors, the math no longer works. Rental income can't cover mortgage payments, taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Many are dumping properties at a loss. Sellers who bought at the peak are trapped, owing more than their homes are worth. Number 2, Phoenix, Arizona. If there's a city that embodies the phrase too much too fast, it's Phoenix. During the pandemic, Phoenix became the poster child for Sunbelt growth. People poured in from California, the Pacific Northwest, and the Midwest, drawn by warm weather, relatively affordable housing, and a booming job market. Builders responded with a construction frenzy, throwing up thousands of homes across the sprawling metro area. For a while, it seemed like Phoenix could absorb anything developers threw at it. But by 2025, the bubble has burst spectacularly. Home prices in Phoenix have tanked about 15% year over year, and inventory has exploded to levels not seen since the housing crash of 2008. Properties are sitting on the market for months, sometimes longer. Sellers are slashing prices weekly, desperate to generate interest. And buyers, the ones who are supposed to rescue the market, are nowhere to be found. The collapse has several causes. First, Phoenix massively overbuilt. Developers constructed far more homes than the market could realistically absorb, betting that demand would remain strong indefinitely. Instead, migration slowed dramatically. Remote work policies tightened, and the people who fled to Phoenix during the pandemic are either staying put or heading back to where they came from. Without a constant stream of newcomers, the market has collapsed. Second, affordability evaporated. Prices climbed so high during the boom that they completely disconnected from local wages. The median home price in Phoenix approached $500,000, a figure that made no sense in a city where the median household income hovers around $65,000. The math simply doesn't work. Third, Phoenix's job market has weakened. The city's economy relies heavily on construction, hospitality, and retail, sectors that are cyclical and vulnerable to downturns. As the housing market has cooled, construction jobs have disappeared. As tourism has softened, hospitality workers have been laid off. Without strong job growth, there's no demand for housing. Fourth, the cost of living in Phoenix has surged. Utility bills, driven by relentless air conditioning usage during brutal summers, are crushing homeowners. Water scarcity is becoming a real issue, raising questions about the long-term viability of continued growth in the desert. Insurance premiums have spiked. Property taxes have climbed. The result is a market in crisis. Entire subdivisions on the outskirts of the metro area sit empty. Builders are offering massive incentives, covering closing costs, buying down interest rates. But even those deals aren't enough to move inventory. Existing homeowners are trapped. Investors are bleeding money every month, and many are simply walking away, letting homes slip into foreclosure. Number 1, Boise, Idaho. If any city symbolizes how spectacularly the housing boom can reverse, it's Boise. During the pandemic, Boise became the ultimate escape destination. Remote workers fled expensive coastal cities for Idaho's lower taxes, outdoor lifestyle, and perceived affordability. Prices exploded over 50% in 2 years, the fastest appreciation in the entire nation. Sellers fielded all cash offers within hours. But by 2025, Boise's collapse is catastrophic. Prices have cratered 18% year over year, the steepest drop in the country. Inventory has quintupled. Homes sit for 6 months or longer. Sellers slash prices weekly trying to find buyers. The market that felt invincible is now in complete freefall. What happened? Boise's economy was never equipped to support the prices that developed. The city relies on government jobs, agriculture, and small businesses, none providing the high incomes needed to justify $600,000 homes. The influx of wealthy transplants masked this temporarily, but that wave vanished. Remote work died. Tech companies demanded returns to office. The people who drove Boise's surge left as quickly as they arrived. Those who stayed discovered Idaho isn't actually affordable anymore. Prices climbed so high that Boise became more expensive than many cities people fled from. Property taxes surged, insurance costs spiked. The quality of life advantage evaporated as traffic worsened, schools strained, and infrastructure buckled under the weight. Developers overbuilt catastrophically. They constructed thousands of homes, assuming demand would last forever. Now subdivisions across Meridian, Eagle, and Nampa sit empty. Builders offer incentives worth $50,000, but inventory still doesn't move. Sellers who bought at peak are devastated. Many owe $200,000 more than their homes are worth. They can't sell without catastrophic losses. They can't refinance. They're trapped, watching values plummet month after month. Some are abandoning properties entirely, choosing foreclosure over continued financial bleeding. For buyers, fear dominates everything. Why buy when prices might drop another 20%? The city that represented the American dream of affordable home ownership now represents a nightmare of collapsed equity and broken promises. Boise's collapse shows what happens when speculation replaces fundamentals and markets disconnect from reality.